Well, g'day, Max here again. Welcome back to the shop. So we've got a bit of a video here of a bit of our shed progress. Now, compared to the last, where we finished off in the last shed progress video, it doesn't look like a great deal's been done, but when you've got to make all the parts yourself, as you'll find out if you ever attempt one of these things, it's massive. A massive amount of labour goes into it. So anyway, we've got a fair bit more done, some more steel up. We're coming to the closing stages of our framework now, and I think what's left, we've got some roller door, the framework to go around where the roller doors are going to go, and a truss to build, that'll be in the next video, for up the top where the row of windows goes up there. So it's a bit of a mumble jumble, try to keep it in order as best I could. It was just clips taken on the day over the last couple of months, well actually since the last video, so, and then condensed them all into something I think is watchable. So let's take a look. Well, it seems when you build a shed you just got thousands of holes to drill. Okay, so I'm just doing these two holes now. Now I should have done these in the Glenn's Ironworker when I was doing the other holes, but at the time I was a bit undecided on what sort of a treatment process we were going to do to the columns of the veranda and the rafters of the veranda, being as they're outside. I've decided to go ahead and hot dip galvanise them. So that means these get dipped in a molten tank of about 450 degrees of molten zinc. So you have to have these vent and drain holes. So if that's an offcut of the column, so as you can see, it can allow the zinc to completely drain out once it's been immersed in the tank. You have to have them because of explosion risk. You can't put a sealed hollow object into a tank of molten zinc, otherwise you're asking for big problems. So, fucking heap of shit dog again. I've just set up a simple fixture here, parallel strip and a backstop and another backstop. So it's just a simple matter, pop our part in, nip it down with the clamp and drill our hole. So there's no marking out with this method of doing it, just straightforward, pop it in and go for it. Easy as that. So what we do next for the other side, and repeat the process. So we have these 200mm long tube extensions, and we have to machine a Weld Prep on the end to rectify our bozo mistake we made the other day. So we'll just grip it on the inside of the jaws. Now the plan was to just put the pipe centre in behind it, but as you can see it's going to disappear up inside, so that's not real good. So what we'll do is we'll use 3 pieces of copper spaced equally around the outside. That, and just gently nip up the tailstock like that. Tighten up our chuck and see how that's looking. Now that's pretty good. So now we can safely machine our weld prep on. Okay, should be good. So that will give us a 30-degree weld prep when we butt it up to the other piece of pipe. So we're just repairing our little bozo. So these are the pipe extensions we machined the weld prep on, and we've got them here set up in the rotator to carry out all the welding. So we've done the 7 of them we had to weld extensions on out of the 12, and now we're just setting up to weld the end pieces on. Aye.
I had 2 of those fucking, 2 of those porters last night, but I blew the fucking head off. Didn't even make that.
So what we have to do here, the next stage of construction, these anchor blocks that we have in place here, and the same for across the other side, all 6 over there, so 12 and all up. These have to be drilled and the anchor studs set in place for the veranda columns. So let's go through this process. So with our tape measure stretched out across all of the anchor blocks, every 4 metre mark is the centre position for our group of holes, and what we've done is laid a string line between this column and the adjacent column on the other side, and that gets us our position centrally this way, and we just line tape measure mark up with a scribe line on our drilling jig, and we're in the right location. So then I just mark the drilling jig just in 4 spots with a texture on the paint pen on the concrete, just to make sure it doesn't move. Now this jig that we use to drill, it's just a base, I'll get out of the shadow. It's just a spare base plate that I made, and it's just bolted to a couple of bits of scrap, whatever you got lying around, a couple of old shelf brackets in this case, and it just butts up against to the column, and there's a Tech screw between the end of the bracket and the column, and that's our fine adjustment for our centre. So this ensures that all of our centres stay consistent. So we'll get the drill set up now, and we'll get our 4 holes drilled. So this is just my cheap Ozito hammer drill that I picked up. So we're drilling an 18mm hole. I mean, a Ramset Dyna drill would eat these things for breakfast, but for $130 this will do me for the amount of holes that I've got to do, because there's the holes here, and there will be later on in the shop there'll be holes to do for mounting machines and whatnot. So I found it easier just to buy the cheap $130 one than to buggerise around borrowing one and have it fuck up, or hire one. So these are the chemical vials, the capsules which glue the stud into position. Come with a detailed set of instructions which need to be followed if you want to use them successfully. So they're encased in a foam container because they are very fragile. And you just need to make sure before you do use them that they are still somewhat fluid. It is quite a thick mixture in there. And there's another little vial inside, and that's what sets off the reaction. So with our stud, of course that's the minimum embedment depth, and there's a chisel point there, and on the vial is a round end and a flat end. So you drop them in the hole, flat end first, and the round end goes towards the chisel point of your stud. Okay, this is the process that we use to get our anchor studs in position here. So we've got to give the holes a good blowout and a run through with the wire brush. Okay, so what we do now is a couple of dummy checks to make sure our holes are drilled to the correct depth. So on these studs there's a band, get it up where you can see it, there's a band there which doesn't contain any thread, and that is the minimum embedment depth. So using our jig, which is a spare base plate off one of the columns that will go here, we set that in place, and what we need to get is an approximate height, so we know in relation to our concrete block here and our workshop floor slab that this is going to be in the right height, as we don't have much adjustment on here. So I've laid these blocks as close as I can to a tolerance of plus or 5mm in height, and we're trying to do the shed build like, I'm trying to keep everything to like millimetre perfect if I can. It just, as I said before, it makes life so much easier with squaring things up and that. So we only have a couple of mil either way adjustment on these, so the height that these studs go in is quite critical. So we just roughly set it in there like that. I'll just get it approximately level with a couple of wedges, like that. I'll have an eyeball then on our depth that the stud goes in, so I know how far to screw these studs in, and then I'll do a check with the laser level Okay, so we've got to come down 3mm. So there's enough then. These are drilled quite perfect. So we're 1mm high there. So that tells me I can set these studs in place to their full embedment depth, right up to the marker there, and we still have enough leeway on the remaining thread for adjustment. So pull the studs all out of the base plate. Now we're ready to set them in. So the vials, as we explained before, there's a round end. Oh, where are we? A round end and a flat end. So the stud makes contact on the round end. So we drop the stud in the hole, like so. We drop the vial in, drop the stud in, and we rotate it with a hammer drill to that depth. That's one. Two. Three. And last one. 4. So what we'll do is we'll set our base plate back on now. Make sure it still fits. We'll just do a quick check. So we've got to come down, oh no, we've got to come down 2mm. So there's plenty of adjustment there. And we've got to come, oh no, we're on it there, we're on 0 there. So that's all there is to it. So the reason why we've gone for these studs as opposed to dyno bolts is purely for the adjustment, the fine adjustment we can get using this system. And of course once the plates and columns are in place, then we grout underneath. So that's how we're doing it, and we've got a couple more to go and then we've finished this part. So these are gone solid already. It's only been hardly a minute. So yeah, there's no second chances with these. If you got it wrong, you want to be pulling them straight back out and redo your hole. So what we're making here, these RHS columns, these are 152 by 76 by 4mm wall thickness, which is actually the old 6x3 RHS. So we're just cutting an angle on the end. Cut that through there on that angle. This plate will weld on one end and this will come up underneath the rafter. And the opposite end will have, there's a base plate, just welds on there. So these will form the sides for the roller doors, front and rear. So they'll go from the concrete down there and all the way up there to the apex where that temporary collar tie is there. Now that collar tie will be removed once these two columns go up about there and there. You'll see when we put them up anyway. So that's what we're working on right now. So we'll get some cutting done and some welding and get into it. So we have our veranda poles up now, so they've all come in nice and dead in line. And we're just lifting in the rafters for the veranda. So there's 12 of these all up to go in, and just using the tractor. And a double check. And that's it. So it's all 12 level now, so we'll move on to the next task, which will be the more steel work up top there. So sticking to a tight tolerance when we placed our concrete footing blocks down, which I was working to try and keep them within 5mm of the correct height, that's where it pays off now. As we're pretty well smack in the middle of the travel range on our anchor studs here, so that's worked out well. So the anchor studs are in the exact correct depth, which only leaves not much travel either side. So what we do next is we fill underneath with grout, and then that's these bases done. Okay, well that's our verandas mostly completed. So we have the metal purlins up, and we just have to get the fascia purlins done. They're custom pressing to match the pitch of the roof, so they'll be a couple of weeks away. And The other side's completed, same thing, just needs the fascia purlins. So our next mission, we're going to do the couple of vertical columns on the end walls. I already have them partially made, those blue columns over there. And they'll be the supports on either end for the roller doors, and then we'll just put the cross purlins in to tie them back into the wall. So that's our progress. So I'll see you in the next shed progress video when we are working on these walls.